बॉडी माइकल फौकॉल्ट द क्लिनिक, नहीं ज़्यादा है, नहीं ख़त्म हो जाएगा. Okay. The focus of all medicine is the human body, of course. So the focus of all medicine is the human body. Yet curiously, until relatively recently, the body was not seen as something which was relevant to sociological research. Rather, the body was seen as something natural which was outside the domain of sociology. So body was to be studied through biomedical perspective or approach. However, okay. So the focus of all medicine as a human body, yet curiously, until relatively recently, the body was not seen as something which was related to sociological research. Rather, the body was seen as something natural which was outside the domain of sociology. So it was studied through a biomedical perspective, but now sociology has taken into the study of the body. This naturalistic perspective is closely linked with the biomedical, of course. So this naturalistic perspective is closely linked with the biomedical model and approach. In this model, the body is natural biological. So according to biomedical approach, there's a dominant approach in understanding the body. In this body, the body is natural biological entity, and a normal functioning body can be distinguished from an abnormal body. So you can understand what is normal body and what is abnormal body. This model stresses how doctors, of course, this model stresses biomedical approach stresses how doctors, medical researchers have developed knowledge and understanding of the workings of the body. Doctors, medical researchers have developed the knowledge and understanding of the workings of the body, the biomedical approach. But what does sociological approaches see? How does sociological approaches see body? So it is a view of the body taught in the medical schools and demonstrated in anatomy textbook. So sociology looks at body through a cultural perspective lens. However, this model of the body was brought into question by the work of the postmodernist writers. So the biomedical approach was brought into question by the work of postmodern writers that challenged the dominant role of the biomedical approach in understanding the body. In particular, Michael Foucault suggested that how the body is perceived, responded to, and acted upon is not just a physical issue, but it also has socio-cultural dimension to it. But a social one as well. Indeed, one tradition of postmodernist writers have argued that the social understanding of the body often refers to embodiment is more important than the physical or medical understanding that also looks at the spiritual perspective of the body and looks at the body through a spiritualistic lens. So now we'll be moving towards the Michael Foucault, The Birth of the Clinic, where he explains how the dominant role of the biomedical science in understanding body became prevalent during the time of modernity. As we saw earlier, Foucault's starting point is the social reality. So how does Michael Foucault see the society that there is no objective social reality waiting to be discovered? The social reality, the reality that is created by the individual, and this social reality created by the individuals is institutionalized in the society through the form of discourse. So in the biomedical approach, this discourse is built by the professionals and the doctors. They dominate the discourse in the understanding of the body and the medicine, and this discourse creates illusion that there is some objective reality that everyone should followed, and this discourse only leads to the classification of the body into the normal body as well as the deviant body. So there is no objective reality, but the discourse creates a situation like that it appears there is some objective reality waiting to be discovered in the society. So reality has been created by the individuals but dominated by the discourse. So let's see. So Foucault's starting point is the social reality is created in various ways through the activities of the people, and which in turn can create discourse. So this is a discourse, that creates an objective reality, which is a way of conceptualizing an issue and provides a framework of discussion and action. The result of this discourse is that, hi Gyan, right now I cannot talk because I don't talk while studying. So we'll talk in the quiz session in night, okay? Anyways, it's not good morning. It's already evening. So which in turn create a discourse, which is a way of conceptualizing an issue and provides a framework for discussion and actions. The result of this discourse is that we come to believe that the way we view the world is truly objective. So this discourse that is created by the medical science, it creates an objective illusion of objective reality that is waiting to be discovered. But there is no such objective reality in the society. So this is primarily a critique of the scientific approach that is used in understanding the society. The result of this discourse is that we can come to believe that the way we view the world is truly objective, even though we know that this true and objective understanding of the world changes over time. So you see this discourse, which is dominated by the doctors and the professionals in the biomedical science and biomedical approach of the understanding of the body. It is dominated by doctors and professionals, and they create the objective reality. They create the classification of the body into normal body and deviant body, and this is the power used by the biomedical professionals, and by the and the doctors, that creates power between the doctors and the patient, and they dominate this discourse. The biomedical discourse is dominated by the doctors, not the patient. And however, if you look at this discourse on the biomedical science that is dominated by the doctors, what I mean is that whatever the doctors say is right in understanding your body and your illness. But this discourse and the medicine does not remains the same. It keeps on changing. So if the discourse is changing, the medicines is changing through the evolution of the society, or how the research process is being conducted time to time, then how can be discourse be objective? Then it's a subjective discourse, because it keeps on changing according to the interpretation of the researcher. But if the patient understand this discourse, then for the patient it creates an objective reality that is waiting to be discovered, that could be seen. But there is no such objective reality. It has been created by the doctors and the professionals who has dominated the discourse of the biomedical approach. The result of this discourse is that we come to believe that the way we view the world is true and objective, even though we know that this true and objective understanding of the world changes over time. It does not remain same. It changes over time. How it changes in the research of the medicine, and how the medicine keeps on evolving in time to time basis. As the research develops, the medicines also keeps on evolving. So it's not objective, and it's not something that is there. It keeps on changing according to the interpretation of the researcher. So in medicine, or in medicines, or for example, understanding of what is health or disease actually changes over time, and so do the explanations and the cures. With regard to the body, Foucault argues that the development of modern medicine and its dominance over discourse have resulted in particular way of viewing the human body come to be seen as normal. Foucault calls this dominant way of understanding the human body as clinical gaze. So these are the words that is used by Michael Foucault. So the concept of clinical gaze, that becomes important. So Michael Foucault, how did the birth of the clinic came? How did the clinic evolve, and how the professionals and the doctors came to dominate the discourse with respect to biomedical science, and what do we understand through clinical gaze? How do they dominate the discourse of the biomedical approach and the understanding of the body? Particularly viewing the human body coming to be seen as normal, Foucault calls the dominant way of understanding the body as the clinical gaze. It is easiest to understand this as a form of the discourse. Okay, right. So it is easiest to understand as a form of discourse of the body. For Foucault, what is perceived as normal and abnormal, that how they differentiates and classifies the body according to that discourse. what is perceived as normal and abnormal derives from this socially constructed clinical gaze. So this is a clinical gaze and a discourse that has been socially constructed. Okay, it's not it's socially constructed because it is constructed by the professionals and the doctors who dominate this discourse. So according to Foucault, towards the end of the 18th century, a change took place in the mainstream approach of disease. Because of the expensive medical malpractice, a new form of clinic was set up in France to provide medical training. This was characterized by a new approach that emphasized clinical observation beside teaching and physical examination. The technological invention that helped this new form of investigation was a stethoscope, which allowed doctors to pinpoint exactly where the problem was and located within the body. Now see, from giving medicine, just seeing so how this the concept of medicines has evolved, and how the concept of the viewing of the body or researching on certain illness has evolved. So earlier there was no such concept of research, that in order to find certain disease or illness, there was no research. The doctor used to observe the body and they used to prescribe the medicines, and if it suits you, well and good. If it doesn't, the doctor didn't know what to do. But now the situation, or the way we come to discover illness in a particular patient has been changed. Now now the doctors are more dependent upon the radiologist data in order to understand what's the problem with the body. So earlier the so-called concept of the radiology did not exist. Just by observing the body, the doctor used to say what illness or disease a patient used to suffer. But now we see that the observation of the body has become very much systematic and scientific. It can only be understood by getting the data from the radiologist through scientific observation by the radiologist. So that's how the concept of defining an illness, discovering a disease in the patient has evolved with time. So the technological invention and the first thing that led to the evolution of this discovery of illness is a stethoscope. The discovery of stethoscope. The technological invention that helped this new form of investigation was the stethoscope, which allowed doctors to pinpoint exactly where the problem was located within the body. So that's how the overall understanding of the disease became more scientific and more systematic through the collection of the data. So the clinic provided doctors with a perfect place for close observation of large number of patients, and because it provided healthcare for poor people who had no other place to go, there were a few objections to the intimate examination of the body. Over the time, the clinical gaze created a completely new way of looking at it. So this concept, the clinical gaze, what do you mean by clinical gaze? That is a dominance of the doctors in understanding the disease or a certain illness that is present in the body. So that's what we call as clinical gaze. So this is a discourse that has been created by the doctor, dominated by the doctor in the biomedical understanding of the body. So over the time, the clinical gaze created a completely new way of looking. Now we see that the way we look at the body, or the way the doctor look at the body has evolved with time. Earlier, the doctor just used to observe the body and prescribe the medicine, but now the doctor wants crucial data, crucial data to understand what the problems the patient is suffering from, or the illness, to discover the illness in the patient body. So it has become more scientific, more objective, more research based. So over time, the clinical okay, we have done this with direct attention to certain structures, certain similarities, certain symptoms, and not others. In so doing, forms a set of rules for reading the body and for making it intelligible. So that's how a more intelligent way of looking the body evolved with time. As the research evolved, the machines evolved, and now we need crucial data. Doctors need crucial data to understand the problems the patient is suffering from. We just don't just beat around the bushes. The doctor doesn't just beat around the bushes by giving you medicines. The doctor will first try to understand the disease or the illness you're suffering from by doing certain research, by sending you to get sonography or MRI. Then only they will prescribe some medicine or try to understand what problems you're suffering from. So earlier this was not, there wasn't this such type of research on any disease or illness. The doctor just used to observe your body and they used to prescribe your medicines. But now the way of discovering a disease has become more scientific and systematic. That's what we say, the birth of the clinic, how the medicines and the approach of the doctor has evolved with time. So the role of doctor is to be neutral observer who identifies, classifies. So let me get a point here. Examination of body, evolution of the examination of the body. Here we got a point of clinical gaze, and now we have the changes that took place in the process of the examination of the body, how it became more systematic. Now, over the time, the clinical gaze created a completely new way of looking at the body, which directs attention to certain structures, certain similarities, certain symptoms, and not others. In doing so, forms a new set of rules, for reading the body and for making it more intelligible. Not just based on guesswork on what disease you suffer from, but it became more intelligent and data-based analysis in order to understand the problem you suffer from. So the role of the doctor is to be neutral observer who identifies, classifies, and charts the root of the disease in the body. Okay, so doctor has to behave like a neutral observer, who tries to understand the problem you are suffering from. The patient has to come to be viewed as simply a body, not a whole person. So that's where we see the criticism of the biomedical approach. But in Michael Foucault, the thinker, is saying that when the doctor views a patient, they think the patient as a body, not as a human being, and does not emphasize more on the psychological aspect of the patient, but sees a patient more like a body that is like a machine that needs to be corrected if it has gone wrong, any structure has gone wrong, or there is some issue with that. The patient has come to be viewed as simply as a body, not a whole person. Prior to this, doctors had seen people as a combination of mind, and if you see in the traditional time, your doctor didn't just saw the body, they also used to analyze the mind, the spirit, all such things were included while understanding the body in the traditional time and the traditional society. How? Through the concept of Ayurveda and neuropathy and all such, to the concept of traditional medicines and the traditional rituals involved in understanding of traditional medicines. So prior to doctor used, simply a body, neutral observer. Doctors had seen people as a combination of the mind, spirit, and body, but now the people are viewed just as a body. The idea that the mind and the body could be separated, and the body viewed as a type of machine which would be worked upon. The idea the mind and body could be separated, right? And the body viewed as a type of machine which could be worked upon, and the repair by was a new concept. So that's how he's saying the concept of medicine involved and the approach of the doctor involved with the onset of modernity. Now the body and the mind were viewed separately. Body was viewed as a machine that needs to be corrected, mind was viewed separately. So earlier this was not the thing. They used to view the mind and the body in an inclusive way. So Michael Foucault, the birth of the clinic, first he talks about discourse and he talks about the changes in the viewing of the body. Okay. Neutral observer. Okay. In itself, this is an interesting idea, but Foucault moves far beyond this to suggest that how the body is viewed and how so instead, this is an interesting idea, but Foucault moves far beyond this to suggest in 22 minutes. Okay. This to suggest how the body is viewed and how medicine is practiced upon it is the result of the social change. So there has been, due to social change, due to onset of modernity, body is viewed quite differently than it was viewed in the traditional society. So that's what Foucault want to say. How did how the clinic came into existence, the concept of clinic, how it originated. and that the medical changes reflected the social change. And that the medical reflected, okay, this reverses the commonsensical argument that social change follows from medical or technological innovations. Okay, so earlier, the sociologist thinkers used to think that due to technological innovation social change happened, but now the whole idea is reversed. Now they are saying due to social change technological change has happened. So the whole of the sociological analysis is based on the fact that due to technological change social change happened, but according to Folkwall, this the concept is reversed. Now they are saying that due to social change technological changes happen. Both things can happen simultaneously. This reverses the commonsensical argument that social change follows from medical or technological innovations. According to Foucault, this new way of looking according to Foucault, this new way of looking at the body actually reflected wider political and social change in the French society. Okay, so that's how the new way of looking at the body, it reflected wider political and the social change. It's a very interesting writing by Michael Foucault. This wider changes included a growth in new forms of surveillance and control, as well as the new science of classifying people, which were appearing in a range of settings of at this time. So this change also brought surveillance and control on the people. Like the doctor started controlling the patient, the government started controlling the citizen through surveillance. Earlier, the state used to control the citizens or the people through punishment, harsh punishment. But the concept of control changed in the modern period. Now they started controlling people through surveillance by getting more data about the people. You know, this is a new way of controlling people. If I have more information about you, if I have critical information about you, I can control you in a more efficient way. So this further change including growth in new forms of surveillance and control, as well as the new science of classifying people, which were appearing in a range of settings at this time. There were examinations in school, inspections in military barracks, and new forms of punishment for criminals, in particular being sent to prison to be reformed. So you will see Michael Foucault has come up with various work, the birth of the prison and the clinic, and he has merged all his work. You know, here he has merged the birth of the prison in his work, the birth of the clinic. So we'll see how the concept of control, you know, also changed with time by a different institution. This links to a much wider theme of the relationship between power and knowledge. So he's saying that knowledge creates power. So if you have knowledge about a certain people, if you have their data, you have the power to control that people. Similarly, the doctor dominated the discourse of the biomedical science, and that's how the doctor started controlling the patient. The state, through surveillance, got critical knowledge about the people, the citizens, and that's how the state started controlling the citizens in the modern period through surveillance, with CCTV cameras. You know, we know when you see the CCTV cameras, we cannot steal anything. We have to behave in a particular way. Okay, so that's how the state control people, you know, without punishment. Earlier the state used to control people by through punishment, you know, by giving very dangerous punishments and all, like beheading and all those things, but that changed with the onset of modernity. Now the onset of modernity, we see that the concept has evolved from punishing the body to punishing the soul. Now your soul will be punished. You will be alive, but your soul will be punished. Okay, if there is CCTV camera and if you steal anything, then you will, doesn't mean that the state will kill you, you know, but you will be jailed and the society will talk bad things about you. That's how the soul will regret. There will be more regret rather than punishment. This links to a much wider theme of the relationship between power and knowledge that runs through Foucault work. So everywhere you see, Michael Foucault has wrote how knowledge creates power. The knowledge of the state, the knowledge of the doctor, it creates power to control others. And you will be in their control without asking questions. So this okay. For Foucault, all knowledge has implications for power relationship, and the history of modern human society is that of increasing control over the mass of the population. बिल्कुल. So, for all the knowledge has implication for the power relationship and history of modern human society about the increasing control over the mass of the population. States states originally could only control people through violence or threats, as I've already mentioned. So state originally controlled people through violence, through threats, and therefore the punishment for deviance was actually very much brutal. Gradually, new forms of knowledge developed, which enabled state to control people in a more effective way, and medicine played a key role in this. What's the time? 29 minutes. Gradually, new forms of knowledge developed which enabled state to control people in a more effective way, and medicine played a key role in this. It helped to develop the idea of surveillance by the doctor. Doctor surveys the body. Very nice. The concept is really amazing. Medicine, yes. So it helped the people the idea of surveillance, that is the doctor surveyed the body, and it also generated concepts of what is normal body and what is deviant body, diseased body. Interesting. Gradually, the state could withdraw from having to punish and coerce the mass of the population. Knowledge. Okay. Really, the state could withdraw from having to punish and coerce state. Withdraw from having to punish and coerce the mass of the population, as they learned to do this for themselves by internalizing notions of normal and deviant pathological. A parallel to be drawn today is the way people monitor their own health, taking exercise, eating correctly, and thereby accepting that there is a correct form of body and standards of health from which it is a mistake to deviate. Yes. So, how nicely we have been controlled through the concept of surveillance. There is a discourse created by doctor that if you exercise, if you eat healthy, then your body won't be driven. That means your body won't be disease. So instead of doctors saying us, now people have themselves committed to all such practices, being controlled by themselves rather than the doctors. The doctors has dominated discourse and control the people, but the masses are themselves controlling. There is no need for the doctor to control them now. Many other sociologists have drawn on the work of the Foucault. Armstrong, for example, used Foucault's notion of the clinical gaze and studied the way that this gaze create an even more specific and detailed classification of the people into healthy and modern. And what is healthy and what is unhealthy? Very nice. So if you see. Yes, very nice. So Armstrong studied the growth of the dispensaries, that is clinics, in the early part of the 20th century. So there's a different another thinker who has been inspired by Michael Foucault's work, and he also has studied the origin of the clinics. How has the clinics emerged? You know, what led to the emergence of clinics during the modern period and when the society was changing. So Armstrong said the growth of the dispensaries and clinics in the early part of the 20th century. Originally, these were developed as a location for new arrangements to contact and screen tuberculosis patient. This under dispenses coordinated home visits, check on patients, and ensured follow-up that the patient were treated. As a result of these activities, a geographical and social awareness of disease began to be developed. No longer was disease seen as individual problem, but instead the social origins and social distribution of the disease were gradually established. So according to Armstrong, the activities of the dispensaries raised consciousness among the communities of the social location of the disease, and this justified the extension of the dispensaries. That's how the idea of the clinic emerged. You know, when some of the dispensaries were set up to see the tuberculosis patient, then disease was initially an individual problem. Now it became social problem, and it also changed the lifestyle of the people. And now it created consciousness and awareness among the people that they should take care of their health instead of the uh, state dispensaries creating taking care of the people's health. So disease from individual problem became a social problem. No longer was the disease seen as an individual problem, but instead the social origins and social distribution of the disease was gradually established. According to Armstrong, the activities of the dispensaries raised consciousness within the communities of the social location of the disease, and this justified the extension of the dispensaries' activities. Whereas Foucault and other writers stress the significance of the physical sciences, Armstrong suggests that the new social science techniques such as surveys, physical Armstrong says that the new social science techniques such as surveys serve to map even more accurately the social basis of the disease, to create new categories of ill people and healthy people, and new specialties such as geriatrics and pediatrics. So all this led to the classification of. Hi Andrew. I'm good. I'm good. I'm just studying. So we conduct quiz at 11 o'clock. At that time, you can ask me questions. Right now, I'm in my study session, so it will be difficult for me to reply right now. Okay, it's all. So I have more half an hour left. So in later works at 11 o'clock, I interact with people. We conduct quiz. So there you can join us. I will answer your questions. So in later work, Armstrong suggests that this process has advanced so far that almost everyone can be categorized as ill or potentially ill, and the boundaries between the sick and the healthy are no longer clear. Now moving towards Brian Turner, another important thinker in understanding the body. We understood Michael Foucault, the idea of discourse, clinical gaze, evolution of the clinic. How did the clinic evolve? Evolution of knowledge and control, the system of control, how it has evolved. And yeah, so this is the thing, and it's really very interesting topic. And the origin of the dispensaries and how it expanded is zone arena to such an extent now that everyone, according to the clinic, everyone is suffering from some type of deficiency. If it, whether whether it is of vitamin A, vitamin B, or whatever, but everyone can be categorized ill today is because of the discourse created by the doctor and their power to categorize someone as ill or deviant. Nobody in this world is super healthy. So now we're moving to Brian Turner, another one of the most important thinker in understanding the bodies and the concept of medicine and health. Brian Turner, then we have to Brian Turner. Lots. We didn't have anything, right? Yes. So Brian Turner, the impact of society on the body and the consumption, the body as a project, the reality of the body. And then we move towards disability, illness, blame and stigma, and death. So we have mental health as well, issue of mental illness and death and dying, and then we'll be done. Then after that we'll be doing the study of criminology. Okay, so let's see what Brian Turner has to say about the bodies and health and the categorization of the people into normal body and deviant body. So Brian Turner, regulating bodies. So like Foucault, Brian Turner is interested in regulating bodies. Okay, the birth of the clinic, the whole idea of the birth of the clinic, the creative discourse, clinical gaze, categorization of the people. This is important. Like Foucault, Brian Turner is interested in the body mainly because he sees it as providing an insight into broader social changes. In regulating bodies, Turner explores the way in which bodies are controlled in society. Okay, so in regulating bodies, Turner explores the way in which bodies are controlled in society. He suggests that there are three key institutions dealing with the individual's body. This is an interesting topic. That is the law, the religion, and the medicine. So there are three key institutions that controls the individual body. That's law, religion, and the medicine. Turner suggests that over the time, the influence of each of the institutions has shifted, with religion originally being dominant and gradually being nudged aside by the law and, more importantly, medicine. Not only has the medicine now come to dominate how the body is treated. So earlier the religion is to control body, then the law, but now it has been replaced by medicines. Not only has the medicine now come to dominate how the body is treated, but also medicine now serves as a moral purpose. Okay. However, according to Turner, these moral elements of medicine are typically disguised and they're ultimately legitimized by an appeal to scientific rather than religious authority. Medicine occupies the space left by the erosion of religion. So that's the medicine. Now medicine doesn't serve some medical purpose, it also serves moral purpose. Now how the body. Has the medicine now come to dominate how the body is treated, but also medicine now serves as a moral purpose. However, according to Turner, these moral elements of medicine are typically disguised and they are ultimately legitimized by an appeal to scientific. Okay. These moral elements of the medicine are typically disguised and they are ultimately legitimized by an appeal to scientific temper rather than the religious authority. Medicine occupies the space left by the erosion of religion. Interesting. So Turner suggests that there is a clear parallel in late modern society between the regulation of individual bodies and the regulation of the social bodies. In particular, he identified four tasks that he claims as central to social order. Reproduction, which refers to the social institution that controls sexuality and other physical needs. No, reproduction was also social institution for him. Nice. The regulating of bodies, which occurs through medical surveillance and through the system of crime control. The need for restraint, which is where self-control is applied to ensure that the person does not simply follow their emotions. And representation, which refers to a way in which we physically present our bodies to others. Okay. Pattern the limit between the regulation of individual body and the regulation of the social body. In particular, he identifies four tasks that he claims are central to the social order. So, how the social order happens by regulation? Now, there is a clear regulation of individual and regulation of the social body. And how does it happen? Through reproduction, through so regulation of the individual body to the regulation of the social body, right? So how the regulation of the social body occurs through the regulation of the individual body, that is through reproduction. Okay, and the regulation of the bodies will occur through medical surveillance, reproduction, medical surveillance, and the restraint, which is where self-control is applied to ensure that the person does not simply follow their emotions. Okay, so first the reproduction, that tells us that controls our sexuality, the reproductive institution, and then the regulation of the body, that is done by the medical science and medical surveillance. Then we also have restraint, wherein control our emotions, that we do not go on to do what we like, we act according to societal norms and values in order to ensure social order. And then we have representation, which is how we should present our body, physically present our body to others. Interesting. So Turner work, like Foucault, is rather challenging, but what he is seeking to do is writing is to demonstrate how the individual body becomes a social body, right? The control of the yes, and it is a mistake to separate them, right? So how the control of the individual. Hi Jat, I cannot reply right now, I'm studying. Okay, come at 11 o'clock, we do quiz. At that time I do interact. So how the control of the social body of society of people can be seen as closely linked to control of the individual body, and it is a mistake to separate them. Social body or society of people can be seen as closely linked to control of the individual. So the control of the body, or how the individual body is controlled by the social institution, or okay, how the social body or society of the people can be seen as closely linked to the control of the individual body. And that's how the social order is maintained through the institutional reproduction or regulation by medical surveillance, through restraint and representation. So Foucault and Turner have drawn attention to the fact that the body, the body and how we perceive it must be seen in relation to the wider society. Yes. The body and how we perceive it must be seen to the wider society. Their analysis opened up on the idea that the body can be seen equally in social as well as physical terms, right? Foucault's work is in particular due sociologist's attention to the socially constructed nature of the body. So this was the idea of Brian Turner, inspired by Michael Foucault's idea of birth of clinic. Brian Turner, that is a regulating body, how the individual body is regulated through a social body concept, and their institution that regulates it. Regulating the body. So the key institution, first it was religion, then came the law, and then the medicine. And then we see what are the other institutions and how the individual body becomes a social body. Okay, regulated by the society. Now we're moving towards the impact of society on the body. So what is the impact of society on the body? Society will regulate the body, right? In order to establish social order, right? One cannot go and do anything with their body, like one cannot harm the body, there's a moral dimension of harming um, one's body, right? For example, suicide is criminalized also in India. See how law, how the law controls the individual body. Then come the biomedical approach, how that controls the individual body. It's a time 48, okay. The first and perhaps simplest approach to sociology of the body stresses a way in which social factors interact with the biology, to influence the shape and the health of the body. Now, social factors, social norms and values will tell us, what to do to your body. You cannot harm your body. Law is there if you commit suicide. Then doctors are there to repair your body, if you harm your body. Then religion as an institution will tell you, not to commit suicide and all. So there is various institution that controls your body, and that tells you what is normal to do, what is normal for you to do for your body, and what is abnormal. कमाल, ये सब मत लिखो पगलू मैम, ओके, आई डोंट लाइक इट, ठीक है? नहीं तो मैं डिलीट कर दूंगी मैसेज को, नहीं तो खुद ही हटा दो. what पढ़ाई करना कोई पागलपंती का काम नहीं होता है, ओके? करियर अचीव करना इम्पोर्टेंट होता है. The first and the perhaps simplest approach to sociology of the body stresses the way in which social factor interacts with the biological to influence the shape and the health of the body. गुस्सा नहीं दिला रहे, यार डिस्ट्रैक्ट कर रहे हो बिना मतलब का. मैं बोल रही हूँ 11 बजे आई विल इंट्रैक्ट, 11 बजे मैं क्विज कंडक्ट करती हूँ, पता ही है, तो मैं कोई रिप्लाई नहीं देने वाली हूँ. सो दैट्स व्हाट आई एम ट्राइंग टू से यू. इट्स फाइन कमल, कोई इशू नहीं है, यू कैन कमेंट वॉट एवर यू वॉन्ट, लेकिन डिस्ट्रैक्शन होता है थोड़ा ऐसे कमेंट करते हो तो मुझे समझ नहीं आता है क्या पागल बोल रहे हो मुझे, मतलब क्या किस टाइप के बिहेवियर को यू कॉल इट पागल. अब वही मैं पढ़ भी रही हूँ, पागलपंती पढ़ रही हूँ. डिवेंट एक्टिविटीज़. आई हैव मोर 10 minutes, so the first and perhaps simplest approach to the sociology of the body stresses a way in which social factors interact with biology to influence the shape and the health of the body. For example, Connell argues that the males are not necessarily naturally stronger, taller, or more muscular than females. Indeed, variations within the sexes are possibly as great as between the sexes. So males are not necessarily naturally stronger, taller, and more muscular than females. Indeed, variations within the sexes are probably as great as within the sexes are possibly as great as between the sexes. However, males are encouraged to engage in sport from an early age, and the consequence of the stress on male strength and sporting prowess is that men tend to be more likely to develop a muscular physique. Okay, that is the impact of the society on the body. Okay, Kamal. आई होप तुम भी इंस्पायर हो ये सब देख के पढ़ने के लिए, और अपना जो भी चाहते हो लाइफ में अचीव कर पाओ. So the first and the perhaps 52 minutes. The first and the perhaps simplest approach on to the sociology of the body stresses the way in which social factors interact with biology to influence and shape hmm, the health of the individual. For example, Connell argues that males are not necessarily naturally stronger, taller, and more muscular than the females. Indeed, variations within the sexes are as possible as good between the sexes, where males are encouraged to engage in a sport from very early age, and the consequence of the stress on male strength and sporting prowess is that men tend to be more likely to develop a muscular physique. This is not necessarily biologically determined, and so this is not necessarily biologically determined, and Connell points to other societies such as Berber women in the Atlas Mountains of Morocco, where it is the women who are expected to undertake the more strenuous task, and this is a very important thing. Atlas women of the who are expected to undertake the more strenuous task and who therefore develop more muscular physique. So the actual physics of the males and females are partly developed from the expectations we have of correct male bodies and what is correct female bodies. So that's the idea of the social, the impact of the society on the body. So Dickens, writing from a Marxist perspective, argues that capitalism has a major impact on the form of the bodies. In that, okay, so the impact of the society on the body. Dickens, writing from Marxist perspective, argues that capitalism has a major impact on the form of the bodies, is that different types of employment and life experiences can alter the body, such that the capitalism comes to modify human biology in its own image. So now, how capitalism impact the body? Because we are right now reading about the social impact on the body. So first was according to a gender norms. Now with respect to capitalism, how the work within the capitalist society can impact the human body in a positive or a negative way. And life experience can alter the body such that capitalism comes to modify human biology in its own image. Evidence to support this comes from Bury work, longitudinal study of individuals over 43 years. They concluded obesity and raised blood pressure levels are directly linked to deprivation over an individual's lifetime. In Britain, a government study published in 2000 found 30% of women in manual occupations were obese, okay, compared with 60% in professional occupations. Interesting. So that's how the society controls the body. The capitalism can make your body obese, or it can make your body malnourished to the work that they provide you. For example, if you see the IT sector employees, 40% of the IT sector employees have high blood pressure and they're obese and prone to smoking. Okay, the body, sex, and the gender. Let's discuss the gender. The body and the consumption. The body is a project. To the reality of the body. Conclusion. Then we have disability, illness, blame and stigma, mental illness, and death. God, lots. Just I'll finish it off. 57 more, 3 minutes left. The body section. Thomas studied the way in which males and females were understood in the medical discourse up to 19th century. This is interesting. According to Lackward, the accepted understanding of the body until the 1800s was that males and females had identical sexual organs. It was merely that the male Ones were on the outside and the females were then, okay, with the ovaries referred to and perceived as the female testicles and so on. According to Lacan, the normal body was that of the male, reflecting ideological views on the superiority of the male over the female. Okay. A similar conclusion was arrived at Lawrence, who studied medical textbook published from latter part of the. Once again, the diagrams and the text refer to the male body as a norm, with the female body as a different. Yes, and the female body either not appearing in the textbook at all or referred to as variant of the male body. 2 minutes. Football history, or as he calls it, archaeology of power, describes how the nature of power has changed over time. In pre-modern times, power had to be imposed on people by forms of discipline. Okay, of course, through punishment. Discipline and punishment which involve hurting the people, threatening, beheading, through such means as torture, body mutilation, and capital punishment. However, this form of discipline is not particularly effective, and it does not ensure the power is imposed on everyone. What it does is to ensure that people comply in appearance only. The true power only emerges when the people can be persuaded to do a certain thing. This is a very interesting concept. Be persuaded to discipline themselves through their own thoughts. Yes, 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 yes. Foucault therefore argues that the real power only occurs when people accept the viewpoint. Earlier how was the power exercise? It was not that efficient, wherein it included punishment, body mutilation. But how the state changed its tactics of punishing people, wherein now people submit to the state. They change their behavior in order to be disciplined. That's how the power is exercised in modern society. This form of discipline is not particularly effective and does not ensure the power is imposed on everyone. What it does is to ensure that that people comply in appearance only. True power only emerges when the people can be persuaded to discipline themselves through their own thought. So you started controlling yourself rather than the state controlling you through your own thought. You do as the state asks you to do, and you do not question. It feels like it's your natural behavior to do a certain way in this manner. For example, waiting when the red light is on in traffic. Foucault therefore argues that the real power only occurs when people accept the viewpoint of the powerful groups. This is a very interesting point. So when the real power actually happens, and when the people start accepting the power of the dominant groups, the elite groups, that paisa kamana is good. So you also run behind wealth, because they have created this discourse that wealth is important, and they have made a society in such a way where you find wealth to be important, and you also start submitting to their discourse. Like I am also submitting to their discourse. So I am also in some other way controlled by their discourse. So it's already 1 hour. Taking a break. I'll be back in some time.